Thank you, Lars. Hello, everyone. I'm he How's the weather? It's very cold and snowy here this morning at 5 o'clock, but I'm very happy to be here. That was a wonderful and amazing introduction, Lars, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you, everybody, for having me. Today, in the time that I have, and I have about an hour, I think we can cover a lot of good stuff. But basically, Lars touched on the one thing that is, well, two things that are really important to me. Number one, teaching people is incredibly fun and probably one of the best parts about what I do for a living, because there's so much information that changes every day. And although you can get most of it yourself online, it's kind of like walking into a gigantic hardware or department store. Oftentimes it's right there, but there's so much stuff that you don't know which things are important and which things to focus on. And one of the things I love to do more than anything is to show people who are eager to learn, who have an entrepreneurial mindset themselves, how to use certain tools to actually begin making a living immediately. And in fact, this year, my company has joined with another company. We have a partnership with what's called firstwebdesigner.com. And I'm going to show you a screenshot in a second when I switch off my face here. We've started an initiative that basically teaches people how to get their first 3 clients in 3 days and make $300. And for many people around the world, that's a significant difference in their income, especially given that it's all done virtually. You can do it from any computer anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter. And so today what I'd like to do for you is to show you the second thing I'm incredibly excited and passionate about, which is WordPress. My very brief background is that I started online in 2006 with my first business by accident. It was about something I loved as a hobby, flying these devices called, in Europe and Asia, they're called microlights. In America, we call them trikes. But basically, it was a way for me to not only put up information about this machine and the videos, pictures, but also to have other people participate in a social network. But what has happened in the last 3 years especially, the software, the cost of hosting, the interpersonal communication available to everybody has almost eliminated all costs. And so with the addition of this last important piece, WordPress, there's now software, infrastructure, and communication available around the world for anybody who wants to use this software to build a business for themselves, build a personal network for themselves, or to do it for clients. And so there's virtually no barrier to entry like there may have been in the past when I needed $100,000 of equipment or very expensive monthly servers. None of that is there now. So with your passion to build something for yourself and or a client, plus this free software and almost nearly zero cost infrastructure, we've got everything we need here to really do some exciting stuff. So if you'd like, I'm going to jump over and put on a screen, the screencasting here, screen sharing, and I can see you guys very well. So if anybody has a question, just stop me or raise your hand at any time, because if I go too quickly, it's just my normal way, okay? All right, great. All right, so let's see how this screen sharing works. I'm going to show you a couple things real quickly. Just by show of hands, how many of you are familiar with WordPress? Have you ever heard that before as a software? A couple of you? Okay. So let me explain real briefly, and I'm going to show in a screenshot here too. So we've got a company. It was founded out of America by a young man named Matt Mullenweg, who's not that young anymore, but he's still in his 20s. And he had an idea about a little software that was called B2 something. I think it doesn't matter, but the point was that he had an idea that if you took this software and had a bunch of people around the world continue to work on it and made it open source, that the contributions of all these developers would mean that the software would get better and that more people would be able to do the things that many of you look younger than me. I'm 46, but back in the 90s when I was in my first run of the internet, in my 20s, Microsoft, I know you know Microsoft, took over the software world, and every single thing they did required a paid license. I'm sure you understand when you look at your screen with Windows on it, somebody's paying for that license. Well, Matt Mullenweg's idea with this WordPress was that they could commercialize it, but that the software would always remain free and open for anybody to work on. And the result is today that almost 70 million websites around the world, that's 20% of the internet, is running on WordPress. So if you're looking for one particular piece of software to learn how to use for yourself or a business to make money, as a freelance web designer or as a person who can assist in an office capacity, WordPress is guaranteed 100% to be the most likely candidate for you to find an income or a livelihood. All right. WordPress is available at wordpress.org, and you can download it and install it here. But as Lars indicated, if you wanted to, I encourage you to drop by, even after we're done today, at firstwebdesigner.com, because this is the place where we're building this year a real resource for a global community. We have over 2.5 million visitors a month from around the world, many of them from the same places where you reside, that are using our tools and other free tips and tricks and software. And here there's a couple videos that Lars alluded to, and we'll give you a link, that show you, for example, how to set up a WordPress site in under 5 minutes for free or nearly free. And if you're doing it for commercial use, it might be only $5 a month. But it gives you the basics of just setting up WordPress. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in and show you WordPress in action. But we have a little community that stems from here that's also called 1wd.tv. And again, Lars will give you the link. And this is going to be, again, another free resource where if you liked some of the videos we've shown you or do, this will be where all of the videos will reside for those community members who are doing exactly as you are, trying to learn how to use WordPress for productivity for themselves or for a business purpose. All right. So there's a couple great resources. The last one, of course, my own business is at labzip.com or labsecrets.com. And if you wanted to go there for more free resources, please go under Lab Stuff, under this video tutorials link, and you'll see, I think we have over 150 videos at any one time in the library, all using, of course, WordPress and using the various things that I'm going to show you a little preview of today. Is everybody with me okay so far? Any questions? Sure. Do you have any questions, or did you just you give me the thumbs up? You're good to go. Yes. Okay, fantastic. I love it. You guys are very exciting. All right, let's jump into it. So let's talk about WordPress in general, about what it is capable of, and then we'll do a couple specifics here with our time allotment, okay? So basically, WordPress started out as a blogging platform, and originally its whole intention was to allow very limited technical users to be able to publish information about themselves, their business, etc. But what's happened is, with all of that development community effort over the last 3 years in particular, it has grown into what they more appropriately call a powerful content management system, CMS. And I'll come back to this in a second so you can see my lips moving. So a CMS basically means that it now is capable of doing far more than just having a blog. Those of you who aren't familiar with what a blog is, I would find that shocking. But basically, the blog was a one-way dialogue. With the content management system, it's now capable of doing much more, where, for example, you can manage custom content. Maybe you have a website you're building about a business that manages trucks. You can actually have it where the truck drivers can input data about their routes or their deliveries, and it can be stored in the same system along with the information that's published, maybe by the trucking company. And because of that, and because of the fact there are also community plugins, things that allow you to have a social network where individuals can communicate directly and do many of the same features you find on Facebook and other places like that, WordPress has really blossomed to something much more powerful. And as you go along, you'll see the most important part is it's what we call modular. So you don't really have to have any programming or developing skills whatsoever. It is almost possible to do everything you want without knowing a line of code. So it's kind of important, almost like an architect knows why and how a building should be built, but doesn't actually lay the bricks. You don't need to know how to write the code in order to build or architect something very powerful using WordPress today. So WordPress.org would be where it's located. I want to make sure you don't get confused. There is what's called a WordPress.com. WordPress.com is basically the folks at Automatic have used their own software to build a commercial version of this. And you'll often have people ask you, well, should I go to WordPress.com to build my site? And just to make sure you understand what this is, if you go to WordPress.com, you can start up a free WordPress site today. but with a very important twist or catch. At WordPress.com, it's free, but for a limited set of capabilities. Whereas at WordPress.org, you're downloading the free software or using that free software on your own hosted server, and you have all the capabilities. And it's a small but very important one, because oftentimes people will start on WordPress.com and then they realize, wait, something's not available to me like I saw in the videos, or I can't do these powerful truck driver content solutions. And that very simply is because you're on the free hosted version where all of those features are not available. All right, so you want to use your own hosting at WordPress.org software. And as far as hostings go, that's too much for us to talk about today, but as I mentioned, most of our clients who are starting out will go with one of our arrangements to use a very low cost, maybe $5 a month hosting plan from something like Bluehost or HostGator, or maybe something overseas that's more popular there. Okay, so if you guys are still with me, and stop me if I'm going too fast, let's talk about what happens on WordPress. Right now, I've got a theme installed, which is basically our responsive child theme. And what does responsive mean? Well, let me show you an example. I'm going to go back to screen sharing. And I'm going to show my desktop. Maybe that'll be helpful for a second. And I think it takes 2 seconds. So while that's catching up, I'm going to open up a new window. And you guys should see the screen by now, right? Do you see the screen? Oh, okay. All right, good. So I want to show you what responsive means. Responsive is really important today because everybody today, I would say that's a bold statement. I would say the greater majority of people today access the internet on a variety of devices other than just their desktop. And so what would happen is if you use traditional web design techniques, you would create what's called a static design, which is designed for a fixed screen. But the problem is, what happens if they're accessing it on an iPhone or an iPad or an Android phone? They wouldn't see the same experience. It would either be shrunken down, too small to see, or potentially it would be something that the text would be off the screen. So I'm not sure if I can do this. If you see do you see my screen now? There we go. Okay, so what responsive does, you see this middle window. As I drag that middle window smaller, you see how that... Okay, hold on. Okay, let's see. I'm clicked on the screen, but I can only see what it tells me. So, what do you see, my face, or what do you see? Oh, good. Well, okay. See, I've got this window in the middle. Let me let. No, I'm doing this on purpose. So you see, just now you see a very tiny window, right? Okay. What I was trying to do, and it just wasn't obvious because it's probably too small. Okay. This is what a normal window would look like in browser size if you were on a regular desktop. It's maybe 1280 by 720. But what I wanted to show you, and I'll wait for it to catch up, is if I shrunk that window to the dimension of an iPhone, you see the content in a responsive design will accordingly fill the screen to make it optimal to view. In other words, it changes for the type and size of the browser window. Do you guys see this on the screen where it's sort of adjusted now to a proportion of a phone? Okay, good. So I'll leave that point there because I realize our screen sharing technology here is going to be a little slow. So let me open up the other windows and then we'll go back to that. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to share this in a more optimal way. So let me change my screen sharing setup. It's my first day playing with Google Hangouts. So I'm going to go over here to, let's go to this window here. Okay. Good. All right. So this is actually the window I was playing with before, and you notice I can stretch it out and so forth. Right? Okay. So getting back to WordPress and the importance of using WordPress. Besides the fact that you can now have a mobile compatible design, the important thing about WordPress is that it's easier than almost any other platform available. That's why it's so popular for non-technical users. So if you're building this for a client, especially for a paying business owner, The worst thing in the world would be if you built them something and then they were too confused on how to use it, right? It's like the tool that you hand over to your employer or your client, and then they end up being frustrated by it. That would be horrible. Whereas with WordPress, it was designed to be for regular folks to use in the beginning, and it's retained that quality. So the backside of WordPress looks like what you're seeing here. It's very simple to follow, and there's a couple key components that I'd like to introduce you to. All right. Let's start with the original purpose of WordPress, which was to make blog posts. There's a content type in here called posts, which is designed to basically have content that somebody would publish on a regular basis. Think of this like the encyclopedia versus a newspaper. Blog posts would be more like a newspaper. Every day a new newspaper might come out and you would have different information. It's the same format, it's the same style, but it's new information every day. Whereas pages, which is the other content type, is more like a book or an encyclopedia. That would be for content that would be always pretty well the same and remain static. Something like information about the company or about the things that you do. They both have a very similar editing format. So when you go over to posts, you can see a list, if you've published before, of any of the pre-existing posts, as well as the date and the category, the tag, and who it is that wrote the original post. Same for pages. If I went to all pages, I could see the almost exact same thing, except by default there's no category. And there's a reason for that, but we'll cover that maybe real quick when we're on that. If I wanted to make a new post, I simply would go to Posts, Add New, and I get a very simple to use editing window here. This is why it's so easy for a non-technical person, because I can just go ahead and type a title. This is the title of my blog post. I can type in content using what we're calling a what you see is what you get editor, or WYSIWYG. If I'm a little more advanced, I can also switch to what's called a text editor or an HTML editor, where I could actually put code in, whether it be basically HTML or JavaScript. You can do a lot of powerful things from this as well. But for most of the users, just a WYSIWYG editor, and this is the content of my blog post. And I can then format it with things, you know, bold or italic, or I can add a bulleted list of, you know, item 1, item 2. If you've ever used a word processor, this is exactly the same level. You have what's called categories on the right side. So if I wanted to, I can add a powerful capacity to filter various blog posts for my users by having different categories. So maybe I'll add another one here, category 2. And as you can see, I can add them on the fly. Category 3. And basically now, if this blog post happened to be about one or more of these categories, I could check the checkbox. And then later when it's published, that means that myself or a reader can go ahead and filter out only blog posts that involve that category. I can add another little limiter or filter called a tag. And a tag is very similar to what you'd see in the library when you're using the Dewey Decimal System and the library's organization. You might have a series of books that are categorized by the type of writing they are: fiction, nonfiction, mystery, history, current events. But then you can have other tags that talk about, do they involve action, romance, drama, or a particular person. This is what's called a taxonomy when you have a category and a tag. And it makes it easy for you to show your client or for yourself how to really give enough detail for readers to find this stuff. So maybe I'll put this and I'll say this is a sample tag. And we'll say it's about WordPress. And I can just add those in. There's a feature here that lets you add an image to each post as well, which is helpful because whether it be for the purposes of the preview for somebody to see what's involved, or whether it be for yourself because maybe you're doing a series of posts and you want them to have the same headline image. This is a way to easily drag and drop an image in, or to take one from your existing media library. So in this case, for example, I can select an image from my desktop here. Let me grab something real quick. Let me find something that works here. So if I have this nice little image of a little product icon, I can drag it in. I can set it as the featured image of this post by clicking a button. And as you can see, it shows me that it's accepted. And now when I publish this post, you'll see this will show up as the blog's featured image for this particular post. And lastly, there's some privacy and other controls that I can put up here. So what if I'm working and I want to actually work on writing this blog post, but I don't want to actually publish it today? Well, that's okay, because there's a tool here that lets you save it as a draft so you can publish it later. You can also adjust the visibility so that this maybe is password protected, or maybe it's private. Maybe you're using this inside of something and you don't want to bore the public with it. You can choose those options as well. But if I publish it, and I'm sure many of you have seen this again and again, when I go to view this actual post, I will see that here's my blog post, here's the content. Now, in order to see the actual thumbnail of the featured image, I would just need to go back over to the home page or the page where I have all the rest of the blog posts listed. And for that, I have to create a special page, because you can see here it's not working. So this is where pages come in. In order to display certain fixed content, including a listing of all of the blog posts that I create, I simply create a new page. Now, are you guys with me so far? Has anybody fallen asleep yet? Because usually in the first 6 minutes everybody's snoring, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and create a new page, a special page called blog. And basically what I'm going to do here is use one of the most powerful features of WordPress, and that's the template system. Now, I don't know if this shows this quickly, but on the right hand side, hopefully you see when I click on this right hand template menu, you see there's a choice of different templates. Does that show up? Lars, is that showing up there? On the right side? Okay, good. So one of the choices is that on the right hand side, when I drop this down, I will select to show either the full posts for each blog or the excerpts. And the difference is that sometimes you have a blog where the content is very limited and you just want to give it all up front in a summary, 1, 2, 3, 4 of all the various posts. Most cases you want to do an excerpt, because then it gives a quick 1 to 200 words summary plus the featured image, and it requires somebody to click to go see more. So I'm going to save it as a template for the excerpt, and I've called it blog, and it now has in the permalink, which is the URL, the word blog, so it's easy to remember. I'm going to publish that. Now if I go to view that page, here's the cool thing. We're going to now see, aha, there's that post that we just created with the featured image now. And so now we've got a scenario where we have the first sample blog post that comes with WordPress called Hello World, and now we got the second one I just wrote, and if I click on this, it takes me to the full post. Now, one of the things people always say is, well, where's my image? I don't have an image anymore. Well, that's because we haven't added an image into the content of the post. Remember, we used that featured image link, which is to show it on the summary page. But if we want to add an image to the post, that's okay, no problem, really easy. We go back to our post editor, and maybe we'll put it below this other content. We go ahead and use the media button, open up our library, and we can either drag in a new image, or we could just click on the image we previously had uploaded and insert it into the post. And I'm obviously doing this very simple. I'm not doing anything fancy like floating the text around it, but that's possible. And now when I view the content of the main post, you can see the image shows up there as well. So if you follow my explanation, hopefully, we have the capability to add a featured image on the excerpts, and we have the ability to add featured image and content inside of the post. We have a way to create pages that, again, contain a bunch of information that might be more long-lasting. And then we also have the ability to use these special items called templates, which allow us to do other cool stuff. For example, what if we wanted to make it a full width page, right? So let's do something like that. If we wanted to make the blog not have any sidebar, and let me show you what I mean by that. You see on the right hand side here, the page is divided into two segments, the main content and then the sidebar. And same here with the blog. When I'm at the blog, the main content and sidebar. Well, if I wanted to change that, it's really quite simple. I just edit the page template that displays the blog. This is what we just created. And now I could go ahead and change it to something that says full width page, no sidebar, right? And this will be kind of silly because it'll get rid of the blog post content, but just to show you, when I do that, ta-da, now it fills up the whole width of the page. So again, without being a coder, without knowing how to actually change the templates, I could just select in most cases the template that works best for me, and the client gets the full result they want, you get the full result you want, and you don't have to go farther. Do you guys have any questions at this point? Because I am going kind of quickly. You okay? All right, good. How many of you intend to use this for personal reasons versus maybe trying to use it to get a client or to do something to make some income? Who's using it to make some income, potentially? Okay, good. Have any of you worked with WordPress before? Okay, I have one hand in the back and one at front. Yes. Hi. Lars, help me out a little because my hearing is very bad and it's distorted. So, oh, right. Okay, that's an awesome question. Very good. All right, so let me explain. I gave you a reference to the video. Lars is going to give you the link called Getting Started in 5 Minutes or Less with WordPress. Now, what you can do with WordPress is you can have one hosted site. In other words, you can have one web server space, and you can have an unlimited number of WordPress installations in there without having an actual domain. You could use what's called a subdomain, which allows you, for example, I use Lab Secrets as my business, correct? And so when we have a new client, we have a web server where a client will get their website set up on a subdomain of Lab Secrets, which means we don't have to go buy a brand new domain to give the client some WordPress space. We can install WordPress, and then in our name server's settings, we happen to use GoDaddy, we have it set up so that when I create a new subdomain, for example, it'll be something like lab1234.labsecrets.com, right? Each client gets a unique subdomain with WordPress, but I don't need to keep buying a brand new domain every time I want to set up a site. And if you intend to do this for your clients, you can do the same thing, because the other tool that we're very well known for using is called Manage WP. And Manage WP allows you to create a sandbox or a test site on your server for a client. And then if a client wants that site on their server, or you want to move it to a new server for them so they're isolated, you can manage it in about 3 minutes with Manage WP and move it over. So that's what we do in today's world. And I have, I'll give you the reference here as well, at ManageWP, MANAGEWP.com. We have a video for that that'll be included in these show notes with Lars, that you can set up a client site, you can demonstrate it, the client can test it, they're all happy, and only then, when they've paid you, do you move it over to their own server. So it gives them the immediate gratification, it gives you the simplicity of not having to buy a domain name and to control it, and it also helps you from a business perspective, because you can give them everything you want, but not everything that causes you to be in jeopardy of losing all your hard work before you're paid. Hopefully that helps your answer. Now, when you're done, Manage WP will help you do this, but even directly in WordPress, let me share my screen again. WordPress allows you to quickly and dynamically change the domain name you use for the site. So for example, here you'll notice I'm using I don't know if you can see it, but I'm using a domain for the sample called 1wdbluehost.com. It's irrelevant, but if I go to my dashboard, under Settings, General, here's where I can change the domain name that's in use. So for example, if I set this up for a client, maybe it's like lab1234.labclient.com, and I have the same over here. I won't save this, but so I set it up to begin with like this, and then the client comes and visits the site and uses the site, and I say, are you happy? And they say yes. Now when I move it back to their server, I could go ahead and change this information to reflect, my client's server.com or whatever the domain name is. And so WordPress provides these tools right in the settings menu for you to adjust whatever the domain name that you're using as quickly as that. Hopefully that answers that question. That is actually a very good question. There's another thing that comes up often, which is backup or protection. And I'm going to show you here, Manage WP is one of many tools. We like it because this is actually an online dashboard where you can manage multiple sites from one place. Other tools are really wonderful, like Backup Buddy and some other things to back up a site. But what Manage WP allows you to do is to literally have multiple websites. Let me see if I can log in here. Have multiple websites from one dashboard. So, for example, I might have like 117 clients on here at one time. I can see all of my clients from one dashboard, and I can manage everything about any of those particular sites right from here. Okay, so it's pretty powerful when you think about that Manage WP is a tool that we've done a lot of work for and used in many of our videos because it's the only logical way, if you're building a business for clients, to be able to not have to log in and log out and change over back and forth. And the other benefit is it allows you to immediately back up a site, or to duplicate a site, or to, for example, create a template like we do that lets you have multiple, let's say, ready-to-use client installations. So when a client pays you to set up a site, we show you, for example, how you can have it already ready to go, like taking something out of the refrigerator and putting it into the oven. It could be ready to go for a client in a matter of minutes, even though they pay you to develop a full site. You've already got it ready to go because you've built it for a client before. And these kind of things are very, very powerful. And they're, again, part of what makes WordPress such a wonderful place to build, because these tools mean you don't have to start anything from scratch anymore. You can become very efficient at building a business as a one-person operation, which might have taken 10 or 20 people in the past, and a lot of hardware and software and management. Okay, so I have a couple minutes left, and I want to cover any questions too. But one of the things I want to show you is the plugins. Now, plugins are really what makes WordPress shine. If you go into the plugins tab, you'll find that there is a list of the plugins that I've already installed, which is none. Now, if I want, I could click on Add New, and it will give me direct access to more than, I believe, 28,000 plugins. And I'm not exaggerating. If I went over here to WordPress.org, and I look under the tab for plugins, currently, I overstated a little. I'm sorry, 23,715 plugins. So what this means is there's 23,000 plus people that have developed solutions that you can immediately have for free to add features to your WordPress site. And that's pretty amazing. There's been 417 million downloads. For example, maybe I'm having a problem because people are causing a lot of spam in my comments area for my website. So I'm going to look up a plugin here called Anti-Spam. And of course, there'll be a lot of choices, one of which we love is called Anti-Spam B. WordPress makes it as easy as this to install. You simply can click on Details, see if this is the plugin you want. You can see sometimes shots of the screen and other details. And if you like it, you click Install Now. Boom, it's done. And then you activate it. And it couldn't be any easier than that. This is the magic when I started this talk about the difference between what Matt Mullenweg created with WordPress and Microsoft. And no offense to Microsoft, I grew up on Microsoft, but You would have had to gone to the computer store in physical world or online world and paid Bill Gates $19.99 to do what I just did for free, and multiply that times 23,000. And you could see where the difference is. But ironically, for you and everyone else, this actual ability has made WordPress more popular to make money on, because now people pay money for the actual results instead of simply paying for the license over and over and over again. So good for you, good for everyone. Now, as far as actually the other one thing that I'll touch on as far as installing, themes. I showed you our default responsive theme, which is something we use in our tutorials, but there are literally thousands and thousands of free themes too. So if I go back to wordpress.org under themes, currently there are 1,694 free themes. There's probably an equal or greater number of those on the internet that haven't been published in here, but you can access them. I encourage you to stick with the themes directory or to stick with a well-known author, because one warning I will give you is that when people list on the internet, free theme, if you get that from an unknown source, I'm sure you imagine where I'm going, that's a great place to end up with something you don't want to get, because people will sometimes bury some code in there that's not so good. So stick with the themes directory or a well-known author. And when you're in WordPress, if you want to install a theme, you can, again, click on Install Themes, search for something, like maybe I'm going to type in the word responsive. And here you go, dozen or more themes that I can install very simply. I can take a preview of it, see what it might look like, and then click Install. And when I do, just like a plugin, it puts it in there and it lets me know, are you ready? Do you want to activate this or not? Okay, so those are kind of the key components. There's some, I could probably, again, talk for quite a bit of time. That's why Lars is giving you the videos to refer to. I have a couple videos that you're going to see that show how powerful it can be to take a WordPress site and with some very basic knowledge of how to use, not coding, but what we call style sheet modifications, CSS. You could take any WordPress theme, including ours, that looks like one theme and make it look completely different. And it's a little more advanced than what we're talking about right now this morning. But if you begin to use WordPress, even if you're not a developer, you can actually build your own library of custom themes that you can sell to clients, or you can learn how to modify client sites so that you're adding real value that to you makes you someone who can earn a livelihood from this. And again, that's kind of our whole proposition of why we're teaching so many people at 1WD-TV, is we want more people than not to understand, wow, this is amazing. It's like literally a playground for designers and people with talent, people with energy like yourself, to really make a livelihood, not just in your local neighborhood or in your own country, but anywhere around the world as a potential client. That if you got email or Skype or something like that, you can have customers around the world. I'm open to some questions, because probably at this point I have about 10 minutes left, and I could talk more, but this is about as good a basic as I can think of. Sure. Maybe the instructor can help too, because I could hear very well when she was speaking. I apologize. My hearing is not so good. Great question. The answer is no. So this means that you can also operate virtually. In other words, if you can log into the site from a browser, you don't have to carry anything with you. You could go with literally traveling with just your phone to anywhere you can use an internet cafe or a client's computer. That's another powerful part about this. Oh, well, you've gotten, now you're touching me close to the heart. This is what I'm all about. All right, I'm going to tell you the ways that you can make money with WordPress today. We have this challenge, this ebook we're releasing even to help you. It's called 3 Days, 3 Clients, $300. Remember, number one, you're living in a global economy. So you could be a single 21-year-old person or younger in an apartment anywhere in the world, and you can find a client who has a need for a WordPress site who's used to paying thousands of dollars a day for somebody to make coffee for their company. All right? Don't undervalue that you have the capacity to learn these basic skills. So the number one thing that we teach on how to use WordPress is to find the pain. Most of these companies have the pain on some basic graphical needs. So if you did nothing else with WordPress, one of the things we're showing you how to do is to find some basic graphical items that need assistance. Now, this could be as simple as the logo at the top of a WordPress site, or the header, or it could be learning how to style, the columns to look nice. There's about a half a dozen things that most WordPress beginners do wrong that involve just simple layout. And those are tasks that you will find through the various resources we list on this 1WTV. People go to find developers to help them, but you can have the same skill. So knowing the basics of WordPress and some basic graphics, you could be charging $25, $50, $100 for something that could take you, with maybe a day or two of practice, minutes. So literally, there's a blog post about this that was very funny, but it was really true. How I made $12,400, an hour on WordPress. And it was a gentleman who felt guilty. He helped a client with something she was so frustrated about all weekend, and it took him 2 minutes to do, but he charged her $100. And he felt bad after taking her money and said, well, I just can't live with myself. Please take your money back. She said, are you kidding me? You made my whole weekend. I'm so happy because I was frustrated. So that's the leverage of WordPress, and that's where you should start. Absolutely. WordPress can be installed on any server that has what you call a LAMP, L-A-M-P setup, which is truthfully about 90+% of the servers today. Very few people are using Windows-based servers. So that means Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And just about any of the popular serving companies are running that. And they also, like you'll see in the video, have WordPress as a one-click installer. So if somebody already has a has another site on the root of their domain, you can either move that over into like a folder sort of to put it away in storage and then install WordPress, or you can also install WordPress in its own subfolder. I don't encourage that because then that means that the domain will be like spencerforman.com/ WordPress folder / whatever. But either way, it is possible. You just have to decide what you want to be displayed for the first thing at the domain, WordPress or some other content. Sure. Right. Oh, okay. Let me explain that. When you watch the video that Lars will give you the link for, the install it in 5 minutes, WordPress as software is always available for you to get the code. So they do allow you to download it. And I have other videos that show, if you're sophisticated and understand what I'm going to say, you can develop on your desktop if you want, using a local server on your desktop. But what I prefer to teach people how to do is to just get a very inexpensive hosted website and use it live on the hosted version. And when you do it that way, you can install it either one of two ways. You can download the zip file and then upload that to your server, or you can use the one-click installer from the web host like Bluehost and don't even have to get the software. Don't be fooled by the fact that it's a download. That's just to give you a zip file that has the software that ultimately you're going to put on your web server. Right. You don't need a desktop. You're not running it on Windows or Mac. Well, I mean, there's really only two ways to do it. You can run it locally on your desktop, and there's a video I have at LabZip that shows how to start a local server. And this is more advanced than this, lesson today, but you could run a simulation of a web server on your desktop and basically modify the site and do all the things you do, but nobody else will see that unless they're on your local network in your own home or office. So what I prefer to suggest is exactly what Lars said. Get a very inexpensive $5 a month web hosting setup, and you can build as many sites as you want for you and your clients and share them. And then when the clients are ready, they can pay for their own web space, or they have their own web space. You can transfer it over for free using Managed WP. Sure. Good. That worked out perfect. All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate the chance to speak to all of you, and I hope that we'll see some of you. I have an open forum at LabZip. You can always ask questions. I am available via email at help@labzip.com. You can catch me on Skype. Lars will give you all this too. At Skype, it's Spencer Forman. But really where we're trying to bring all this energy from you guys and others is over to the 1wd.tv community, where there's going to be the videos and a forum, and everybody can share and ask questions, because we're trying to make it that everybody who we're training how to use WordPress can bring all that info into one great space. Everybody learns from each other that way, and it's easy for us too to create a lot of energy and enthusiasm about not just WordPress, but how to actually apply the stuff that we're teaching in WordPress to the real world. So, I think most of us love to learn, but it's nice to know that, wow, there's actually a chance I could supplement my income or make a real livelihood from this. I know it to be true because I live that dream, but for everybody we've come in contact with, it's definitely a great place to learn how to do this stuff without having to rely on someone else. It's been my pleasure. I hope you guys have a great day. Okay. Okay. Bye, everyone.